Greg Gumbel was back in the day, and he was announcing games. And I remember just watching, and again, I was so small, but it was like it was fun watching a game with him. He sounded energetic. He made the game come to life, and I think I learned a lot about the game. But it was like this would be so fun, and I think it was really him. He's the one I identify.
Hey everyone, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Travis Waters, and I created this podcast to share stories worth telling. Whether it's about someone who has a zero to hero story, a hero to zero, or something in between. Now, today's guest, we have Jim Coventry of Rotowire, and we learn how his passion for sports changed into a passion for teaching, and then again, back into a passion for sports. Let's go ahead and hop into our discussion with him now. Enjoy. Hey guys, it's me, Travis, with the How I Got Here podcast. We are now on episode number 11 of this new podcast, and we're joined today by Mr. Jim Coventry of Rotowire. Jim, for those that don't recognize you by name or face, let's kind of just lead off with, I kind of just gave a little bit away, but kind of give off your title and your role anyway right now as it is, as of this recording in 2025.
Yes, I am one of the editors for NFL coverage at Rotowire.com. We are a fantasy football service. We certainly have free stuff online. We have a subscription-based model otherwise. But yeah, I've been with Rotowire quite a long time.
I love it. Now, as I believe you said, you've already kind of watched these introductory episodes that we've already launched. As far back, the first question I like leading off with, because it kind of gives us the launch pad, is as far back as you can possibly remember, how old were you and what was the first time that you had any concept or thought of, this is what I want to be when I grow up? So kind of what was the age, and then what was that first idea you had?
So, yes, ironically, I think back, I was like 5 years old and I was watching NFL football. And I'm thinking to myself, it would be very cool to be sitting in a booth and talking about football all day. Now, it's not exactly what I do, but that was the beginning of what would be a bit of a dream. And as we talk later, it really evaporated for a long, long time. But that was at 5 years old. It was just very, very interesting to me.
So that is a very young age to have that kind of idea plan. So was it like, were you watching a lot of other people doing it? Were you reading a lot of articles and like, I would love to do something like that? Like what was going on at the age of 5 that you're like, that what I'm seeing or reading, that is what I want to do?
It was surprising as I look back that being that young, that I was actually watching football every Sunday, whenever it was on Monday night, always watching football. And I remember like Greg Gumbel was back in the day, and he was announcing games. And I remember just watching, and again, I was so small, but it was like it was fun watching a game with him. He sounded energetic. He made the game come to life, and I think I learned a lot about the game. But it was like this would be so fun, and I think it was really him. He's the one I identify, and he obviously it was forever ago, but yeah, it probably was him. And I never really thought about who it was, who's the inspiration. I'm going to pin it on Greg Gumbel.
All right. And because you had that idea so early on at the age of 5, did the trajectory of the next 13 years through the education system, through middle school, high school, junior high, if that's what you refer to where you went with, there's so many different terms for education. I never know which one the right one to say. But anyway, all through high school and everything, was that always the career trajectory, or during that path from age 5 to let's say 18, were there other ideas that were sprinkled in during that time?
Yeah, so as I said initially, it was very strong. And as I would watch sports over the years, I would kind of gravitate back to it. But I never seriously thought that I would go to college and be a communications major and then try to find the way to move into that market. I wandered in terms of where my career choice was going to go. Went to Loyola University, but even while I was there, I was studying philosophy, which is mind blown why somebody would do that. But it was back in the day when you actually studied what you liked, and then you would find a career path after that. Of course, the world changed right afterwards. So I was really in the river without a boat. But really, that thought of being a broadcaster. It was in the deep, 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 deep back burner, and I was not prepared for that career at all. So I was ready to move away from it, thinking this is never going to happen. There are so few people who do something like that, not even worth trying. So I really had given up on that whole idea.
So because so you're the reasoning essentially from shifting from that goal or that dream for the longest time into going to college for philosophy was that doesn't seem like it's going to be possible for me. Let me actually focus on something that I know for a fact can be a career tree that can essentially grow and branch out.
Yeah, I grew up in a very basic town outside of Chicago, a very blue collar type town. And I think the mindset that you begin to have a relationship with is that you have to be a provider. You're going to have a family. You've got to put food on the table. You've got to have something that is concrete. So the philosophy ended up leading me toward a career in education. The football came on way later, and it's an interesting story as we get there. But I ended up teaching, and really in the beginning never thought about that. But it's funny, and as we talk, you'll see how everything you do in life develops you for the next steps. But yeah, I became an English teacher, not even because you can't teach philosophy other than in college. So yeah, high school English was the life for me. But that just again was out of that whole era of make sure you have a dependable job.
So I want to go back to something you said right before that question was asked, where when you're talking about the philosophy thing, you said like, well, back in the day when you actually went to school for something you love, and I feel like that I haven't. I guess I never really thought of it that way, but that's essentially like the same path that I took. So I went. My degree is I have a BA in acting, and so because that I was passionate about acting, I did the drama stuff throughout high school and everything, and like I mean, I'll go to school for something that I already am passionate about. But I mean, I guess in terms of like the actual entertainment jobs you can get with me being in Central Florida, like there's not a single one that requires a BA in acting to get. It's all skill set based, and so like going back, I think my like I don't know. Before you chose philosophy, were you actually originally going to go for maybe like journalism or something like that, or was it just like that idea is completely put in the back pocket, or did you play around with different majors while you were applying for college?
Yeah, I really did put it in the back pocket because I thought, see, coming again from a simple town, you thought of this idea, but you're like, who am I taking the job from? I didn't have that competitive drive in that level at that point, thinking, who am I going to overtake? I'm looking at the people who are doing this for a living, and you begin to doubt yourself, and you think, that's going to be super competitive. And what if I don't make it? What's my fallback plan? And is there one? And that's where that bottom line sense of put food on the table, be reliable, be steady. That's where it overtook it. And I didn't have the imagination. And obviously, the media world was so much different. I'm at this point, I'm 60 years old, so we're talking in the mid to late 1980s, and media was so so different, and the jobs were very limited. Unlike now, where there are so many more opportunities. So yeah, it was backburnered, a complete backburner, and I didn't even think there was a world where I'd ever revisit sports in any scenario.
So asking kind of what your brain was doing as well. Let's just say your freshman year of college when you're starting this philosophy degree, did you know that teaching is kind of where you wanted to go, or was it at least intrigued by philosophy? I know that there's career options. I guess. Well, what point of this degree path did you actually know what you wanted to do, and did that shift at all while you were going to through all your coursework and stuff?
So this is beginning college in 1983, and the guidance counselor would sit down with you. And as I kind of referenced earlier, but I want to make a better point of it, the guidance counselor basically said, find a degree you like, and whatever again, whatever career you go in, you'll just get trained. You need the degree to say that you've been able to finish something, you've gone through the program. That was really what you needed. Unless you had a super specialized degree, like you're going to go in finance, it might be different. So it was basically just I loved the idea of wisdom. I loved the idea of Aristotle, Plato, and others. And to me, it was just I took the guidance counselor's advice. And what ended up happening was as soon as I graduated college, the world had already changed. If you hadn't been specialized, now you're going to be scraping around. So the teaching ended up being a bit of a fallback because when I got out of college and realized the philosophy degree no longer was going to help me with much of anything, imagine that. I was going to go back and get a business degree because at that point, well, I got to figure something out. And so at that point, the short term job was managing a restaurant when I had just gotten out of college because I needed something short term. And so as I wanted to go for a business degree, I needed to basically find another job. Well, substitute teaching was the job that I took on. And within a month, oh my gosh, I was born to do this. So it was one of those serendipity things where he just falls into place. And so that was how the teaching thing happened. It wasn't a definite career choice. It was just in the middle of trying to change things on the fly and to try to find a way to get some kind of career.
So that's interesting. So you went. So it wasn't even a concept while you were getting your degree. It was just happenstance. You had this that substitute opportunity, and then as soon as you got your feet wet on being in front of students and going through there, you're like, okay, this is what it is. Now, at that point, when you had that epiphany, if you want to call it that, did your first thought process go to, well, my degree's in philosophy, maybe I should be a philosophy professor? Or was that something that was so far in a way of what you actually wanted to do that you're like, okay, let's do English for non-university standards?
So you exactly hit the nail on the head. If you teach philosophy, you have to have a minimum of a master's in it. At that
Ah.
point, I had a bachelor's in it. I had a minor in English. And so, if you're going to get a job teaching at the grade school and high school level, you're qualified to teach English with that, which I was. And actually, when you're teaching the novel based English, philosophy in my mind is so much better than the English background, depending how you're going about teaching it. So, it basically was opportunity. There was no university job going to be had with that level of degree. So it was what was in front of me. And again, that reliable job opportunity to put food on the table.
So out of high school, or not, sorry, out of college, we get our feet wet on the substitute teaching. We then have that epiphany of teaching's for me. How easy was it for you to get that English teacher job, or was it something where you're just like, I'm just going to apply to all these different local areas and cross my fingers and toes that somebody takes me, and then was there a certain gap of time before you actually got your foot in the door?
One of the fortunate realities of being a substitute teacher, if you're in a smaller school district, you bounce around all their schools. So you get to know the principals, you get to know the people who were actually hiring. And because of the substitute teacher job being one that was day to day, and you get phone calls from people saying, can you take this job? Getting a good reputation, it makes it very easy to get a teaching job in districts like that. Again, if the reputation was set up well, and obviously it did work out well for me because as soon as there were openings at the end of the year and I had already switched classes over because I needed about 6 education classes. So I hustled through taking those while I was substitute teaching. And yeah, that school district immediately said, we'd love to have you. And we have openings at this school, and that school. And I ended up just taking any one of them at that point because I was happy to have that job. But I was excited to work there. I already felt like I was part of the culture there.
And then how long was this part of the career journey? How long were you an English teacher for?
So I ended up teaching 33 years. I taught a long time. And then as we get into it later, I did overlap football and the teaching careers together. And then we move forward from there. But yes, it was 33 years, put in pretty much a full career.
And was that all at the same location or the same school?
Half and half. I taught the second half of my career in a western Chicago suburb, and then I taught the first half of the career just outside the city of Chicago.
Gotcha. And so you kind of just or alluded, is that the word I'm looking for?
Yes, yes.
I'm asking the English teacher how to speak. Oh man, everybody needs to pay attention in English class. Uh, you know what I was trying to say. That's what's most important. So what you alluded to was already that there was some crossover in this chronological time path here. So at what point during this illustrious 33-year career of being an English teacher did you start having that inkling for, okay, I love this job. I've put decades of my life into this job. I think I want to reach my hand in my back pocket. I want to pull that card that I kind of stashed away for. I mean, at this point, what, like the last 37 years? Let me actually pull this card out now, and I think I might be able to do both. Is that kind of what the mindset was? Of you being able to juggle both opportunities?
It would have been nice if it was that smooth. It was external motivation that got me to this point. So the woman who's now my wife, we were dating, and she realized You watch football all day on Sundays? You better find a way to make money doing that. So what ended up this is halfway through my teaching career. And so what I find out is I had already won a national championship for fantasy football. And obviously
Nice.
with the English and having developed over time with that, I could write. And so I just basically at that point said, all right, you got to make money doing this. I cold called a number of fantasy football companies saying I had a little bit of an accomplishment. I can write. Is there any way I can work for you? And very quickly, I was able. Somebody took me on. It was basically very low, money at first, but I was happy to take the opportunity and the chance to maybe build some resume up, have some writing for a successful site to be able to parlay later. So that was how it started out. My wife, who is now watch what you ask for, you might get it, because now not only am I watching football all day every day, now I'm buried in football in a good way.
And I'm sure I can only imagine that when they're looking at all these applications and they come across somebody who has the English career that you've had up until that point, they're like, oh yeah, like we don't need to worry about him, editing and him with misspelled things or grammar or whatever it may be. Yeah, yeah, he's in. So, what was the first company that you applied to? This is like, yeah, we will definitely take you in. What was that company, and are they still around today?
Yes, Draft Sharks. They're based in
Okay.
Rochester, New York. They took me on. I ended up working for them for a little more than 8 years. They treated me really well. Everything it was, obviously working in another state, never an issue there. Deadlines were always fair and reasonable. But yeah, Draft Sharks is a great place to work for. They didn't have much of a media presence. Now remember, the media presence didn't really blow up until the mid 2010s. So I was with Draft Sharks from 2008 to 2016. So that range, media wasn't huge. So basically, it was a lot of writing.
And during that 8 years for that first opportunity at Draft Sharks, uh, did the teaching career end during that 8 years, or did it kind of you go back and forth throughout the entire time there?
So with football, it was interesting because during that time frame of 2008 to 2016, it was still where football was somewhat of a seasonal sport for people that cover it. You could still get by with working really heavy in the summer and during football season. So I was working my tail off like everybody else, but doing both of those, but being able to put in a lot of hours. The big draft seasons in the summer, and which was great because that's when I was off to get a lot of that work done. But then it was just time management after that. So no, during that portion of my career, I was still doing both.
And did you have were you are so I know you said when you first got this opportunity with the Draft Sharks, like there was pay, but it was an extremely minimal amount. Did you start to like quantify like I would love to do this full time, but how much would I need to get from a writing opportunity for me to leave the job that I've literally been working for 30 plus years at? Did you start to like quantify from a number side, or were you just completely happy and content with, I mean, I love teaching. This is what pays the bills. And then I finally have writing and, maybe it's like gas money or things like that. What was your, I guess, business minded thought process about both opportunities?
So at first, I had mentioned the pay with Draft Sharks was low, but it got significantly better for part time work. So it did get better. But the thing I also learned, it is extremely difficult to get a full time job in the fantasy sports industry. And it's still to this day, it's difficult. There are not a ton of full time fantasy sports jobs. So I was content working part time. And again, as I said, the pay did get better and doing both because it didn't seem likely to get one of those full-time jobs. And if you lost that full-time job, because there's no guarantee you'd hang on, if the company folded or something like that, and you never knew that. So basically my goal was to work part-time but work a ton, and then get to the end of my teaching career and collect a pension, and then try really hard to get full-time work in the industry from that point.
I got you. So it was not essentially you leaving the teaching career to go full time into it. It's when you essentially reach the apex of the teaching career to get that pension. Then it's like, okay, I already have my plan B lined up. My plan B is actually I'm already what like 8 9 years in at this point. It's just I guess crossing your fingers and toes to reference that again. Of as soon as I retire from teaching, hopefully someone will take me in a full time role, so I actually don't have to struggle or pay the bills or anything like that. So 8 years Draft Sharks. So which one ended first? Was it the retiring from teaching or the Draft Sharks 8 years?
So retiring from teaching happened in 2023, so it was recent.
Okay.
So I worked with Rotowire. So I moved to Rotowire in 2016, second half of the year there, and Rotowire really gave me a lot more media opportunities. But again, still part-time work, and that was it. When I got to the end of the teaching career, Rotowire had been bought up by Gambling.com, and there seemed to be an opportunity for full-time work, and I needed to teach one more year for my full pension. But when I realized there was a chance to get a full-time job with Rotowire, I just let go of that last year of teaching, said gotta walk, and I took that opportunity, and I've been very happy with that. So it's been about 3 years roughly I've been full-time with Rotowire now.
And so, did those? I'm trying to keep track of the timeline here. So, did your retirement from teaching and essential? Well, you said you've only been RotoWire for what, 3 years? Is that correct?
Full time for 3 years, but I've been with Rotowire since 2016. So with
Which is
Rotowire 9 years, but it was part time for
okay.
the first 2/3 of that, and it's been the last 3 years when that opportunity when we had been bought out to get that full time work. Like I said, I had to run. I had to leave teaching a year early because like this opportunity may never come again.
Yeah. And so, did you, because you left teaching a year early, did you screw yourself at all on that pension opportunity, or did you still get it? Or I don't, how does it work if you leave a year
It's a
early? Just
percentage. You
less?
every year you teach, you get a percentage for it. So you a small amount over time. It was totally worth leaving.
Yeah.
Very small percentage, but again, 100 times out of 100, got to make that decision.
Right. Okay. I got you. Just want to make sure that you didn't just like that you leaving a year early, like the
Oh
vesting
no.
options. Like it's you're 5 years, you're at 100% invested. 4.9 years, you're at 0%. So you got to stay for that
Ah.
extra month there. Okay. So leaving a year early, going to RotoWire, part time, then blossoming into the full time opportunity. Now, for our viewers and listeners that have now heard you talking for the last 21 minutes, I'm positive that if they've listened to SiriusXM Radio or SiriusXM Fantasy specifically, that if you listening to this, you're like, I recognize that guy's voice. Well, there's a reason for that because that epiphany just happened in my head as well. I was like, wait a second, like I already know that you've had SiriusXM time, but I was like, man, that voice is so iconic. Like, where do I recognize that? Oh yeah, duh. We already went over that he was on SiriusXM. So when did that part? So you've been writing. You did the Draft Sharks writing. Like you said, media wasn't big during that time. You then got the once in a lifetime opportunity to start with Rotowire, which blossomed into the role you have now. When did it kind of sprinkle in opportunities with them outside of just writing?
I believe this is a great story. So, RotoWire every year they have a trip to Vegas where all their writers come out. The full time people obviously paid by the company. Part timers, their choice. You don't have to go, but you go on your own dime if you want. And working remotely, RotoWire at the time, this pre-COVID, and so most people worked in the RotoWire office. The people who were remote were just part time workers. Well, I thought, let me go to Vegas and let me just meet people who I work with. And I'm pretty social, so I always love seeing people. And the fact I went out there, and this is the full year. I was with them 2016, and then in 17 in July, I went to Vegas, and I was talking to who I didn't even realize what his job was. DJ Trainer was the media guy, and I remember talking to him saying, I really think we need to beef up the podcast. The content isn't quite, up to our power, I didn't believe. And then he just told me, he goes, I got a better idea. We have a weekend opening on Sirius XM. And he hardly knew me. And the only thing I could think, they knew my writing, of course, but I think because they realized how I interacted with everybody, they realized I could communicate. They probably figured out that my speaking ability was what it was because this came out of nowhere. This was not talked about. This just like dumped on me, and it's like, oh my gosh, could not believe that I went on this 3 day trip just to meet some people, and all of a sudden I'm immediately going to be on the weekends on XM. I mean, it wasn't a life dream because I never thought of it that way. But if I knew it was something I could ever think about, it would have been a life dream.
Did anybody tell you, like your entire life, or even up until this point, like you have a voice for radio, like you need to be on a mic? Did that ever, like anybody, relatives, friends, or just people listening to you talk ever say that to you up until this point?
I've heard I had a face for radio, but nobody ever really told me I had a voice for it. And, it's interesting because once I had that opportunity, I think I developed my voice further. I think I realized that the potential of a lot of people listening, I better be careful when I speak. Because when you're speaking, when you're teaching, you know your audience. And when you're talking amongst friends, you know, you're not formally speaking. But I really think I was behind a microphone. Well, I better sound like I belong behind a microphone. I really think it was a conscious moment and decision just to make sure I could be the best I could at that. So, no, people didn't tell me I had a voice for radio because I have this like harsh, it's called Cicero. It's outside of Chicago's accent. And sometimes when I'm on the air, apparently people told me that doesn't come through. So that was it. But no, nobody ever told me that.
Get that Chicago mob boss sound.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Jim in Chicago. Don't mess with him. So I think that that's pretty interesting as well. Is well, I'm sure your first radio spot was just full of nerves and everything because that's not something that's familiar to you. Have you listened? Have you ever went back to that first episode and just noticed the difference between how you sound, how comfortable and free flowing you are now compared to that first one?
I definitely did notice. I spoke a little faster. I don't think I spoke with confidence and authority because even though I knew my content, there still was some underlying nerves. And when I listen to those shows, I can tell that I didn't speak with the command that I did have of the material. I didn't sound hesitant, but now I feel as if, yes, I'm nervous before every show, but it's only like one of those things till the lights go on and
Yeah.
the mic goes live, and then you're fine. But no, there is a definite difference in the authority I speak with now. And it feels good because I think that translates to an audience. Because, like others, I do study my craft hard. And I do hope that people appreciate my material. And the voice needs to match that. And it wasn't something that I couldn't will that one. I just think it happened with repetition and just understanding of continued preparation of material.
Okay, so chronologically, right now, we're I believe the last time you gave us a year to map to everything was 2023, which is when you started getting the was that the Sirius XM opportunities or the show stuff?
So the Sirius XM that began in 2017. So I've been was
Oh, that
my
was
ninth
early
year.
on to Rotowire then. Okay.
Yes, and that was the thing when when I was saying I went to Vegas that 1 year into my job, and I just made a benign comment about their podcast, and then all of a sudden DJ Trainer's like, "Well, let me, we have a spot on the weekend on on XM." Oh my gosh! So yeah, it was that quickly in, and so I've had that much time to develop on there.
Okay, I guess I got confused on my timelines. That's on me. But so now we're at 2025. From everything we've kind of went over with you blossoming into getting the radio opportunity and then growing your voice, growing your comfortability, calming the nerves and everything, and then now to the last few years, has anything else within the career path shifted at all, or has it been essentially the same? I mean, same in the sense where you have the same responsibilities, but I know that every year in this sports industry, everybody gets just a little bit more busy as it goes on. But how did that grow or change at all from, let's say, 2023, just the last like 2 or 3 years?
Rotowire definitely made a committed focus to move heavy into social media videos. And we had done some before, but it was not. It would be podcasts would be put on the video, but there was no big effort to be harsh, all in on social media. When that happened, I became one of the leading faces. Which again, that could be a problem. I would say leading voices, but hey, the face is the face. Can't do much about that. But I became probably pivotal on the Rotowire football product for social media. So yes, now that has been the big increase in work. There are weeks where I'll film 15 videos for the video editing team and they just give me a list of what they want, but that's been the biggest addition. And again, if it weren't for the Sirius XM opportunity, now to be able to just do these videos, the videos I'm one take and the editors say it's an easy edit. They don't have to do much with them. So it really translated over. But really, my job is now probably 75% media and a very small percentage of writing.
And with everything you're passionate about. For, I mean, like you said, age 5, you want to be somebody who talks about sports, to getting to the philosophy degree, going through that very long, great teaching career into where you are now. How, specifically with the first year at Draft Sharks to now at 2025, how much has your interest in what you wanted to do, like what you wanted your responsibilities to be, what you wanted to be paid for, how much has that shifted? Like, because you said that you never had any intention of doing anything on the media side necessarily, but now because that's so much more of it, is it something that it's just, this is what I'm asked to do, so of course I'm passionate about it because this is now my job, my career? Or as soon as you did it, did you have that immediate like, oh, I can get used to this?
That part of getting used to this is true. But what I recognized in both professions is that we're really serving people. When I was teaching, if there were people looking forward to come to my class, if they smiled when they walked in the door, it charged me up to the point where I could be better than I thought I could be. And the same with football. Knowing in the early stages, somebody might look forward to an article. And then as we moved on, somebody's looking forward to a radio show or a video. That is what my motivation is. My motivation is now I'm an infotainer. I want to give people entertainment. I want them to hopefully learn a little something. That drives me. The money is fine. The money puts food on the table, but really it's purpose. And when I go to the Fantasy Football Expo every year in Canton, Ohio, there's tons of fantasy football people. I'm happy to see everybody. I say hello to as many people as I can because in whichever job I had, teaching or this, you become part of people's daily routines, and that's an honor.
I do want to give nice. I had this planned as a segue, but since you just mentioned the Fantasy Football Expo, I know that it was just last week. I wasn't able to make it this year, but I went to the previous handful of years there. I love what Bob's doing with the expo because uh, I've been going to all of the fantasy sports slash sports betting conferences in North America for the last 5 or 6 years now, and they're all very similar in terms of, businessy and meetings and all these things. And then Bob's like, you know what, we're just going to put all the fantasy football fans together in one gathering, whether you are purely a fan and just like fantasy football and you don't do anything as a career, any writing, anything like, well, not anything as a career, but anything as a career in the space. And then also, we're also going to invite the people that are doing the content, that have the apps or have the sites or whatever it may be, or have the personalities like yourself on SiriusXM. And it's just like, it's so interesting how unique it is of just do you like fantasy sports? Doesn't matter if you're working in the industry or not, but hey, come to, Canton, Ohio and just hang out with people or involve yourself in the drafts they do there. But shout out to Bob. I like what he's got going on there. So did you happen to go this last week?
So yes, I've been to every expo, and I was at the expo before it was actually an expo. It was just the Kings Classics drafts.
Yeah.
There were two 12-team drafts. I've always been in the Jim Brown division. Dave Richard, Andy Behrens, Bob Harris, all those guys. And so it started out really small, but that was a beautiful thing because to get to spend quality time with people who you knew but you didn't know was great. And then it became even better, as you mentioned, when Bob Lung built this into the expo, and every year it grew a little and grew a little. And it has just really made the fantasy community much more fun than it ever could have been. Again, it's all about people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely like it. I'm pretty sad I missed this year, but the thing we like to conclude now that we're here at 2025 of the chronological timeline is there are so many things that can happen throughout your path that you are in control of and things that are outside of your control. But all of these things that shift are what is most commonly referred to as butterfly effects. Through the 30 plus years teaching, before you'd even thought about a philosophy degree when you just wanted to be in sports, to after the teaching where you're now fully engulfed in sports, which individual butterfly effect, whether it was inside your control or outside of it, do you credit to where you are today?
That's a great question, and I love it because I remember my dad was a truck driver, and that was back in the day. You loaded your own truck, and he worked really, really hard. And my dad didn't say a lot, but he told me one day, he said, Jim, I want you to work with your head and not with your back. Your back will give out over time, and it's going to be tough. And remember, I'm coming from this blue collar Cicero town. So in reality, even though I was the first one going to college, there still was a world where I could have ended up working with my back. And for whatever reason, I listened to my dad. A novel thought, something we should always do. But when we're young, we don't always do that. And I think that is what got me to go to and through college. But listening to that, and the irony of that is my back ended up needing to be fused. So if I had a career of labor, I would have never made it, and I would have been in a really tough way. So the butterfly effect of listening to my dad, and then I ended up obviously working in a classroom, and then for fantasy football when my back was needing a surgery, I was still able to do my job and live my career. But that one instance is something that was probably small in the moment, but it was a huge butterfly effect that put me at where I am right now.
So if you would have essentially ignored that, what where do you think your career path would have went if you were essentially quote unquote working with your back and not with your head?
Well, like I said, with the nature of the back issue I had, and it was debilitating,
Yeah.
and it was basically my spine was destroyed, and it wasn't from an injury. There was some defect in my back, and so I needed the surgery way back in the early 90s. I was 25ish years old, but the surgery success rate was only 10% at the time. So I waited. I waited almost a decade after that, and it was becoming more and more debilitating. And then it was in the late 90s where the success rate was 90%, and with the pain level, that was an easy trade off.
Yeah.
So where would it have gone? I don't know, because if I hadn't gone to college, I may not have been able to get a office job or a teaching job or anything. I would have not been able to do that. The labor jobs would not have been possible because
Right.
of the situation I was in. I don't know where I would have been. I don't have an answer because there aren't many good answers out there, and it really may have been scraping by. But with all the pain I was in, I have no idea. But it would not have been good. I could tell you that.
That's yeah, for I don't have the exact same back that you have, but having the destroyed back nonetheless, I definitely uh I wouldn't I don't know why I asked that question because I wouldn't be able to answer it myself on what I would have to be doing
Right.
if I was doing something
Oh,
working with my back. So yeah, it's man, I'm having flashbacks now. So Jim, I do want to appreciate you for sharing your story with us here on the How I Got Here podcast. Um, love the I love the back pocketing of ideas. I feel like that's something. If there's any takeaways, I guess from Jim's story, I think it's the back pocketing of ideas and not necessarily cutting it up and throwing it away or lighting it on fire. It's this won't work right now, so let me save this for later, which is the exact thing you said with the surgery. 10% success rate won't work right now because I'm not going through that for a 90% failure rate. Back pocket the surgery. Oh, hey, medical advancements, we're out now at 90%. Pull that card out again. Teaching career nearing the pension end. Pull that card out of the back pocket again. Let's get back into the sports interest. So, yeah, if you have something that you're passionate about and it doesn't work out right now in 2025, put it in the back pocket. Don't light it on fire. Jim 101. That's the class you just took right now. Jim, appreciate your time again. If you guys enjoy the show and you enjoy listening to Jim's story and you want to add him on LinkedIn, his name right there is on the screen. I can't promise he's going to accept the connection request, but you can
I
always
will.
try just in case. If you did enjoy the show and you want to listen to more episodes, just simply subscribe to whatever platform you're listening or watching this to on as we go live, or not necessarily live, the show goes up anyway, 6 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays. But Jim, again, thank you for joining us here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show.